No one in that quiet Rhode Island courtroom could have predicted what was about to happen. It started like any other morning, another routine parking ticket, another nervous man standing before the judge. But when 68-year-old Harold Thompson, a frail veteran with tired eyes, walked in clutching a crumpled envelope, something felt different. He wasn't there to argue or make excuses. He just wanted to explain. Then Judge Frank Caprio noticed it, a faded tattoo on Harold's arm. It wasn't just ink, it was a story, a scar from a lifetime ago, when Harold was fighting a war most people had already forgotten. And from that moment, the courtroom changed. The laughter stopped. The cameras went silent. Everyone could feel that something powerful, something human, was about to unfold. What started as a $50 parking ticket would soon turn into a moment that left the entire courtroom in tears. A story of sacrifice, love, loss, and unexpected kindness that would touch millions across the world. Stay till the end, because what Judge Caprio does next will restore your faith in humanity. It was supposed to be a simple morning at the Providence Municipal Court. The air was light, the cases routine, a few speeding tickets, some expired meters, and the usual nervous laughter of people hoping for a break. Then the door opened. A man in a worn-out denim jacket stepped in, holding a crumpled envelope. His name was Harold Thompson, 68 years old, a veteran with tired eyes that had seen too much of life. He walked slowly, like each step was measured, steady, careful. He took a seat in the back row, waiting for his turn. The clerk called out, "Case number 12, Harold Thompson parking violation." Harold stood, nodded respectfully, and made his way to the front. Judge Frank Caprio, known for his warmth and compassion, looked up from his papers with a smile. "Good morning, sir." "How are you today?" Harold's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "I'm doing all right, Your Honor." Judge Caprio glanced at the file. "You have a $50 parking ticket, Mr. Thompson. Looks like you were parked in a no-parking zone outside the hospital. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir," Harold said. "I was there for... well, I had an appointment." "I didn't notice the sign." Caprio's tone stayed kind. "An appointment at the hospital? Were you visiting someone?" Harold hesitated, his hands gripping the edge of the podium. "No, sir. I was... visiting my doctor." The judge leaned slightly forward, sensing something unspoken, but he didn't press yet. "Well, let's see what we can do. Maybe you can tell me what happened that day." Harold nodded. "It was a Monday morning. I had a checkup scheduled, and I couldn't find parking anywhere near the entrance. I figured I'd only be in for a few minutes. When I came out, the ticket was already there." Caprio smiled gently. "That happens more than you'd think. How's your health now?" There was a pause. The courtroom quieted as Harold's voice trembled. "I've been better, Your Honor." "I've been better." The judge's kind eyes softened. "Take your time, sir. No rush here." And at that moment, Caprio noticed something on Harold's arm. A faded tattoo, half hidden beneath the sleeve of his denim jacket. It wasn't decorative or modern. It looked old, military. Caprio leaned closer. "That tattoo, sir, may I ask, were you in the service?" Harold looked surprised. Then he smiled faintly, tugging up his sleeve. "Yes, sir. U.S. Army, Vietnam, 1974. The room went still. What had begun as a $50 parking ticket suddenly became something else entirely. For a moment, no one spoke. Even the cameras, often present in Judge Caprio's courtroom for Caught in Providence, seemed to pause. Caprio's expression changed. The warmth was still there, but now with deep respect. "Vietnam," he repeated softly. "That must have been a tough time." Harold nodded. "Yes, sir. It was a long time ago, but some things, they stay with you." Judge Caprio leaned back. "You know, my brother served too. I always say, The people who wear that uniform carry more than we can ever see. Harold looked down. His voice was barely audible. Most of my buddies didn't make it back. I did. But sometimes I wish I hadn't. The words hung heavy in the courtroom. Caprio paused, choosing his words carefully. You came back, Mr. Thompson. That means you carried their memory with you. That's a heavy but honorable thing. Harold gave a slow nod, his eyes misting. I try to remember them every day. Caprio turned back to the case file. You said you were at the hospital for your own appointment. Are you okay now? Harold exhaled, the kind of sigh that comes from deep inside a man's chest. I'm fighting cancer, Your Honor. The doctors say it's advanced, but I'm still going. The chemo makes me forget things sometimes, like parking signs. The entire courtroom shifted. People leaned forward, silent. Caprio's hand rested on the desk. I'm sorry to hear that, sir. That must be difficult. It is, Harold said. But I'm not complaining. I've had a long life. Lost my wife 5 years ago, but I still talk to her every night. Caprio smiled gently. She must have been a wonderful woman. She was, Harold replied, smiling through tears. She waited for me when I was overseas. We married when I came back. 50 years together. She passed from cancer too. Maybe that's just how it goes. The judge took a long breath, visibly moved. The courtroom wasn't a courtroom anymore. It was a sanctuary, a place where a man's life unfolded, not just his mistake. Caprio leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, can I ask, what's that tattoo mean to you? Harold glanced down at the faded ink. An eagle clutching a ribbon with the words, Never forget. It was my unit's mark, he said. But it's more than that. It's my reminder of the men who didn't make it home and of the promise I made to live for them. Caprio nodded slowly. And you've kept that promise. Harold shrugged lightly. Some days I do better than others. Then Caprio smiled, that familiar Caprio smile that always carried empathy. Well, sir, I think you've done just fine. The courtroom erupted in a quiet, emotional applause, not loud, but heartfelt. The cameras captured every moment as Judge Caprio, instead of moving to the next case, leaned forward with genuine curiosity. Mr. Thompson, he said, I'd like to hear a bit more about you if you don't mind. You've earned that right. Harold chuckled softly. Not much to tell, Your Honor. I grew up right here in Rhode Island, joined the Army at 19, thought I'd see the world, and I did, but not the way I imagined. Caprio smiled knowingly. Vietnam changed a lot of young men. Harold nodded. Yes, sir. I came back different. Spent a few years lost, trying to figure out where I fit in. My wife, Linda, she saved me. Said I had too much heart to give up. He laughed quietly, remembering. She was a nurse. She patched me up more than once. The courtroom laughed gently with him. I worked as a mechanic for 30 years after that. Raised 2 kids. Both grown now. One's in Texas, the other's overseas. Caprio said softly, Do they know you're here today? Harold smiled sadly. They know I'm around. I don't like to bother them much. They've got their own families. Do they know about your illness? Harold hesitated, then shook his head. Not really. I don't want them worrying. I figure I'll tell them when I have to. Judge Caprio's voice softened. You're a strong man, Mr. Thompson. But even strong men need someone sometimes. Harold gave a half smile. Maybe so. But I'm used to fighting alone. Caprio sighed quietly, glancing down at the $50 ticket still sitting on his desk. You know, sometimes life gives us these little moments, small things that seem unimportant, but they bring people together for a reason. Harold nodded slowly. Maybe this is one of those moments. Caprio chuckled. I think it is. The room was completely silent. Even the usual rustle of papers and courtroom murmurs had disappeared. Everyone knew they were witnessing something more than law. Caprio leaned forward again. "Tell me one thing, Mr. Thompson. If you could talk to those men you served with, the ones you lost, what would you say to them today?" Harold took a long breath. His voice cracked as he spoke. "I'd tell them I didn't forget, that I kept their memory alive, that I tried to live right, even when life got hard. And I'd tell them I'll see them soon, and we'll all go fishing again." A few people in the gallery wiped their eyes. Caprio nodded. "That's beautiful, Mr. Thompson." Then Harold looked up, meeting the judge's eyes. "You know, Judge, I wasn't even going to fight this ticket. I just wanted to explain. I figured maybe someone should know why a man like me parked too close to a hospital door." Caprio smiled warmly. "I'm glad you did, sir." "I'm very glad you did." Judge Frank Caprio sat back for a moment, his hands folded. He had heard thousands of stories in that courtroom, stories of struggle, of poverty, of human mistakes and redemption. But this one was different. He looked at Harold and said quietly, "Mr. Thompson, you've already paid more than most of us ever will, not with money, but with your service, your loss, and your courage." Harold lowered his eyes humbly. "Just did what I had to do, sir." Caprio smiled. "You know, my father used to tell me something, that when you see someone in trouble, you don't look away. You listen, because sometimes that's all they need." The courtroom was still. The judge's voice softened even more. "I think this courtroom today needed to hear your story." "I did." Harold blinked rapidly, clearly touched. Caprio turned to the clerk. "How much is this ticket again?" The clerk replied softly, $50, Your Honor." Caprio smiled faintly. $50. You know, Mr. Thompson, when I think of the cost of freedom, $50 seems like the smallest debt this country could ever owe you. The audience in the courtroom began to tear up, a few clapping softly before Caprio gestured gently for quiet. "Let me tell you something, sir," the judge continued. "This ticket, it's dismissed. Completely. You owe nothing." Harold looked up, startled. "Your Honor, I didn't come here looking for pity. I just wanted to explain." Caprio interrupted kindly. "And you did. You've reminded everyone here what true dignity looks like. You've reminded me why I sit in this chair, not just to uphold laws, but to see people." Harold swallowed hard, his eyes filling with tears. "Thank you, sir. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Caprio said softly. "Just promise me you'll keep fighting. And if you ever forget, look at that tattoo, and remember you've already overcome more than most could imagine." The judge stood and extended his hand. Harold hesitated, then stepped forward and shook it firmly. Two men, two generations, bound by respect. A quiet sniffle echoed from the gallery, a woman wiping her eyes, a young man bowing his head. Even the officers nearby looked moved. Caprio smiled again. "Mr. Thompson, do you have transportation back home today?" Harold chuckled weakly. "Yeah, I parked legally this time." The courtroom laughed softly. "Well," Caprio said warmly, "good, because I'd hate to see you back here next week." Harold grinned. "Don't worry, Judge. I'll behave." But Caprio wasn't done. He reached under his bench, pulled out his own wallet, and handed the clerk a bill. "This is for the parking fund, in Mr. Thompson's name.